This is Man to Man 360.
All right, welcome to a new episode of Man to Man 360. This is a special episode, and it's a Father's Day episode. So we have an exciting guest for you all that I want to introduce you to. Of course, I'm your host, Daryl Anderson, and today's episode is with my father, William Anderson. Today, we're going to dive into some things that I think you'll find interesting because you'll hear a perspective that you probably hadn't heard before on the way men were at some points in the past and how fathers were at some point in the past and how we talk about how things are today with guys you've heard on the show for the last year and a half or so. But we're going to get ready to dive into that in just a minute. But before we go there, I just want to remind you guys to definitely visit us at man2man360.com. That's man360.com. And there you can also follow and subscribe to our podcast, as well as go to the videos tab. You'll be able to catch our YouTube videos and also see this one, which will be exclusive on the YouTube page. Also go to Man to Man 360's Facebook page. That's facebook.com/man2man360, all one word, man, the number 2, man 360. And go there and tell us what you think about the show and that kind of thing there, too. All right, cool. Hey, we're going to get ready to dive right in. And again, this is my father, William Anderson. First of all, say hi to the Man to Man 360 audience.
Morning, everybody. Nice to be here.
It could be night, but that's okay. But anyways, one of the reasons we're doing this recording is because I've always wanted to do this anyway. But secondly, the guys had brought up in one of the podcast episodes of maybe a few months ago where one of the guys had asked, hey, be curious to see what your dad thinks about some of these things or et cetera, and how things were at his day and all that kind of thing. And so we'll have some conversation here because we can't sum up 78 years in just a few minutes here. But we can give you some perspective so you can have an appreciation where you are. And hopefully that'll cause you to sharpen some things in life today to be better men, better fathers, better just people in society and that kind of thing here. So, hey, but so talk about how you grew up. Back then they had a lot of large families, and he had a large family with his dad and lots of brothers and sisters and whatnot. But the unique thing about his story was the fact that I'll let him tell it. As far as his mom, just speak briefly on that part, because I know everybody's used to their mom raising them and everything else, but just talk just briefly about that perspective.
Yes, it's sadly to say my mom died before I was 1 year old, so I've never got to know her. But I was raised by my aunt. She took me in, and I lived with her for quite a while, which I don't remember any of that. But from a mom's perspective, other than that, I was raised by a stepmother, which we didn't get along all that, but we do. Yeah, mm-hmm. She was a stepmother. And so you're not going to get the same treatment from a stepmother you would from a mother. So it's something you have to deal with. Yes.
And how was Grandpa?
He wasn't a great talker, my dad. You do what I do. It followed me, whatever I do. Otherwise, the word says, do what a man do. You know, you a man, you boy child, be a man. So what is a man? But be a man, what do you mean? So you look at the men, you look at your dad, my dad, you look at my uncles, and that's what a man do. They took care of the family. They was in charge. They ran the house from their perspective as the head of the house. And no one bucked that. And when my stepmother would buck it, not her, only any other woman in the house, the first thing they would say, you can't measure your arm with my arm. Otherwise, you can't come up to me. I'm the head, and so you go back to your position. And that's how they explained that. He didn't give us a lot of teaching as to how a man's supposed to do. They just said, do what a man do. And so that means you watch other men's. And you choose to do according to your training. And that's how we learn to do what a man do. Boys would get together and talk about things. Everybody would come with a different perspective as to what they see a man to do. And we would talk about those things and you pick your own route. Otherwise, they didn't give you a lot of instructions as to what to do and how to do. They just tell you. It's... Being a man back then was a breadwinner. Most of them were farmers.
Yeah,
we were farmers. So from that standpoint, he gives the command as to what we do on the farm and when the women's to come out and help, what their role was at the farm, and their role as a housekeeper, primarily gathering crops was the time that women helped. Up until probably July, women didn't do any kind of farming. They just
What were you guys doing though? Planting or what was you doing?
Starting off in March, you would start breaking the ground up to plant whatever you're going to, whether corn, cotton, tobacco, all those things take precedent. We grew our own seeds for everything. If you could plant tobacco, we had what you call a tobacco bed. That has been planted back in December. So you'd have to go in the woods and break up new ground. We always used new ground to plant seeds. And from there, we make the preparation for it. Yeah.
And once it's planted, then what was next on the farm?
Once it's planted, then you cultivate it. That's the word I'm looking for. It has to be cultivated. And as a good farmer, he'll know what to do. You got to keep the weeds out. You got to fertilize it. You got to do whatever it's necessary to make that crop grow. And, up until that point in time, you just take care of the farm. Yeah, it shows the animals.
Yep, sure, you got the animals too.
We didn't have tractors. It was a horse, a mule, whatever you do. You had to take them just as well. That was the first thing you do in the morning when you get up out of bed. You have to take care of the animals. They had to be feed and watered and everything else before you go to school. That was did every morning.
Now the girls did that, or was that
no? That's a man's work.
Okay.
The women didn't do that. The only thing they had to do was milk the cow. Other than that, no, they didn't have nothing to do with it probably until up in June, July.
Okay. So when you graduated high school and all that, then you pretty much, that's when you went to the military, correct?
Yeah, after I graduated, yeah. I came up here first and I...
Oh, by the way, so we're talking about South Carolina. Just for the audience that don't know that.
Andrews, South Carolina. Yeah. We was in this country of Andrews, South Carolina. Yeah. Father, I believe he went to the 6th grade. Okay. And he had about 6 or 8 brothers and sisters. One of the girls graduated from high school, but the boys, I don't think about 6 brothers, none of them made it to the 6th grade. He was the first one who went to the 6th grade. And other than that, my father, next in line, I was the firstborn that went to finish high school. And also went to the Army. My granddad was in the Army. I had an uncle went to the Navy, not the real Navy, but they called the CVs. Some of you may know what that means. And other than that, I was like the first in everything was come to education. Because my dad wanted us to go to get a better education than he did. But he was good at it. At 6th grade, he was always the one to keep secretarial. He's always, in any organization he went in, where men's were, he was always the one with the book because he had 6th grade knowledge and no one else did.
That's 6th grade, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. So when you got out, you went to, now that was Vietnam, right?
Yeah. I went to Vietnam. 1 year after I got out of high school, I was drafted into the Army, spent 2 years there, and came back home. And I went to work, Packet Chemical Cleaning Company. But that wasn't what I came here for. Manpower training opened up downtown. And it was
this in Rochester?
Yeah, this is in Rochester. And I went through that training. I went through 3 classes of manpower training to be a machine shop, the machinist. That was experience. That was a good experience. Because I never knew what a machine shop was. I never knew what a lathe were. I never knew what a mill. I never heard that. And these things were, you just cut steel. Turn steel, cut steel, mill steel. I didn't even know what did those things until I walked into class. But I graduated, actually within the first 8 weeks, I was moved to the top of the class, which the other guys knew about it because they went to school here and I didn't. And so I grasped things quite easily when it comes to work with my hand. And so that's the way it was. And I graduated from there and went to work for Gleason. Yeah. To retire. It was actually almost retired. And I worked the last 10 years of another company I know. Yeah.
But also, too, with working with the hands, it allowed you to also learn how to work on cars and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. My uncle had a T-model Ford. And I don't know who taught him to work on cars, but he bought one. And he always take me and his son with him to work on cars, and we always work with him. And so I just picked it up from there. Like I got it in the Army. I bought a 64 Corvette Monza, and that thing was the limit. I liked the car, But man, every week that thing cost me $100, my paycheck. And I got tired. I said, I'm not giving nobody my $100 this week. Whatever wrong with that car, I'm going to fix it. And I started fixing on cars that had no training from nobody. I found out what was wrong. I took it off and put it back the way I took it off. And from there on, I just kept learning. There's nothing on the cars I hadn't fixed for the transmission yet.
Well, actually, even though the cars back then was probably compared to the ones today a little easier to dive into.
Oh, yes.
Right now, I think it's all just computer chips. I think pretty much.
Yeah, it's hard to work on cars today because the computer chips tell you what to do, and you can throw things out of balance. So you probably can do only oil change and spark plug right now, if that.
Yeah, if that. Yeah, because I know you taught me how to do brakes, change the thermostat, tune-ups too,
Yeah,
tune-ups,
tune-up.
a few other things. So I knew how to do those things. And people are surprised because I'm mostly in the techie world, but yet you know how to do those things. You learn those things pretty much from your dad and your father, that kind of thing anyway. So, but that's where I learned that stuff from. Because those are things that if you get stopped, if something happens, what are you going to do? Yeah, you can take it to someone to get it fixed, but sometimes a lot of those things you can get done quicker. Nowadays, it takes me about almost a month just to get an appointment to get my car into the shop now. If you can do those things right away yourself, just buy the part and do it yourself, number one, you save a lot of time, but you also save a lot of money too. So I think those are the key things.
Yeah, come to work and everything. And back in, when cable first came out, television during that time still had tubes in the back of them.
Yeah.
So I called the repairman over once, and I saw what he did, and I've never called another one since. When my TV broke, I went and fixed it. Even I know some stuff with you when it comes to computers.
Yeah.
I changed some stuff on my computer. I changed hard drives and chips and stuff out of my computer.
If you can use your hands, and I think sometimes guys say, I'll just pay somebody to do it. That sounds good. And it's not, I don't do that because I don't have the money to do it. There's a mindset that thinks I don't have to do that and someone else can do it. But when you're always handing certain things off to other people, there's something about masculinity that you're handing off to somebody else. Because the guy that's fixing, he's really the man. Right. If somebody has to, there's guys that don't even know how to fix a flat tire. If you don't know how to fix a flat tire and somebody else got to come do that while your family's in the car, then that guy's really the man, not you. And so I think there's things, I don't care what level of life, how much money you make in life, there's certain things you should just be able to do with your hands, or how techie you are and you work with computers, you're a programmer, engineer, whatever, but you should still be able to do basic things, not deep stuff, but basic stuff with your hands and that kind of thing. Talk a little bit too, how'd you meet Mom?
We was in school together from ninth grade. So she wasn't my first date. We talked a little bit in 10th grade and it didn't go too well. So it didn't start up again for my senior year. And so we dated a little bit, and I went off and I came to Rochester, and that ended. When I came home from Vietnam, I visited all of my classmates that were still home. Most of them were gone, and she was one of them. I visited her, and we had made a date, and we started dating from that point on. And I came back to Rochester, but we would write each other. We didn't do too much telephone. I don't think she had a telephone at the time. But we wrote each other, and from that on, and I would go home quite frequently. We would just get off from work on Friday, and we'd drive 1,000 miles to see her and come back Sunday night. And I'd go to work Monday morning at 6 o'clock. Yeah. So, in a way, she was my high school sweetheart, I would say she was. Yeah, it was good. And when we got married, 68, it was a proud moment for me because I saw some things in marriages I didn't like. I didn't like the fighting between husbands and wife, and I didn't think you had to do that. But I find out because of misunderstanding it happens. But it was my opinion that if you treat a woman the way she wants to, you shouldn't have to fight her. I never did anticipate hitting a woman. This wasn't in my vocabulary to hit a woman. Yeah. I wasn't going to hit her regardless. Those things that I decided in my life I wanted to do, I would not do, and I wanted to be a good role model for my kids, because if everything follows another, if hitting wives, if it lead to my father, to me and to my kids, oh my God, when is this roller coaster going to stop? Everything stop and start with me. With my life.
I do want to talk about, as far as from a husband and fatherhood perspective, especially in the 70s. What were some of the things that you saw with, what was the common type of guy, especially in the 60s and the 70s, and the common type of father that you saw, both good and bad, back at that time?
It was a learning process for me because I grew up under my father, ear. So I knew what they do. So that's all I know. As I grew, get married and went through life, new information came out. So I saw changes that I had to make because everything that I knew and did back then didn't transition into the new era. So
What do you mean?
okay, the way you treat your wife, the way you treat your children. Back then, parents didn't spend a lot of time with the kids, talking to them and playing with them and all of that. They didn't. If you wanted to play, you find kids to play with. My father didn't play with us. I've never known my father to play with me in his whole life. But I see where other people's playing with their children, talking to them and give them instruction. I learned my own instructions from whatever I took from the world and from my friends. And I'm not saying that it was always the best way, but that's what we had then. And so if I can help my children, my boys, my children, learn things faster from me, it'll be some things that they won't have to dig up because it'll be built in them.
Yeah.
They won't have to research it. And if they do research it, they'll have something to compare it to. Comparative analysis is always the best thing. What has been stored in you and what have you been hearing? Now you can make an analysis and interpret which one is best for you. Can you use some of this and some of that, put it together, come up with your own interpretation?
True. But we see what's out there today with guys today. We know the good and the bad, how guys are fathers and husbands or just men in general today. I want to paint the picture for the audience. What were guys like back in that time frame? Like the guys that you lived around, you worked around, maybe family member, whatever, that kind of thing. Especially maybe in the 70s or in that kind of thing.
Yeah, even during that time, we still had a lot of the mentality of where we came from. Children should be seen and not heard. It's my way or the highway. Men's did had a credibility as to if my friend is my friend from the friends that I hang around with, then anything that his is his, and I will protect him and give what he has.
So with other guys like peers and friends, there was a certain respect. Like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Okay. That's what I'm talking about.
I wouldn't date a girl if my friend ever talked to her. If he died, I could never talk to her again because you were my friend's girlfriend. You're going over the line.
Yeah.
Talking to your best friend, girlfriend behind his back, that's heresy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't do that. It's just a known fact that you don't cross the line. You don't mess with your friend's wife. It doesn't matter where he is.
Yeah.
You don't do that. And even in the church, I find out that people didn't know that, but I would see people doing it, and that bothered me. The difference between then and now is everybody's for themselves. It's too much of a dog-eat-dog world. There is no territory. There is no boundaries. If there is no boundaries, who are you? And we are not animals. Even animals stick within their boundaries of their own nature. Yeah.
And what about as far as guys work? I guess to some degree, it's probably always been the same to some degree as far as guys working, and were they lazy, more lazy guys, less lazy guys, were guys more into work? What was life like at that particular time when it come to work?
We had a work ethics. I didn't know anybody who didn't work. I came to Rochester to look for a job. I heard said everybody could have 2 jobs. And so I just wanted a job to work and take care of myself, number one. Before I even thinking of looking for a wife, you have to learn to take care of yourself. You wanted a job. I believe that songs and times and politicians with welfare system seems to stop men from being men.
Back then in the 70s?
It started way back in the 70s. They would come from Carolina up there looking to get on welfare later on. How could you come up to get on welfare? When I came up, I wanted a job. I came here in 64. I come looking for a job, but later on I found that some kids was coming to look to get on welfare. So you...
Why, they couldn't get on welfare down there?
No.
Oh, okay.
Because, no, you couldn't get on. A woman could get on, but a man couldn't get on welfare. They would let you. And so I saw many of them came up and they never did got a job. I saw some of them came up and got on welfare and later they got off and went and got a job, but ruined them. The songs, Let the Woman Take Care of Me, that wasn't a good song era because men started doing that.
Yeah.
The sunroof top and all of that stuff. And men think they had to do what they hear through songs, and that's just not reality. You still supposed, women's within the characteristic of being a woman, they still want a man to take care of them. They still want you to open the door. They still want you to move that chair. And when you stop doing that, then you take away that women desire from a man, and she starts to be probably more like you. What I'm seeing now, the women's are trying to imitate men, even in the clothes and their characters. How could you be a woman and trying to imitate a man? I got my own money, I got my own this, I got my own that. Okay, good and fine, but don't try to be a man, still be a woman. And give men the opportunity to treat you like a woman. When you take that away from him, then he'll stop doing it, and nobody's doing nothing. So you move away from... So
women was starting to do that whole mannish thing back in the 60s and 70s.
More to the 70s than the 60s. Every era seems to bring on a new aspect of life. And yeah, it starts a little bit, everything grows. Everything starts from a seed, and then it grows bigger. And that's what we are seeing right now. Women want every role that a man wants. Why would you want to drive a bulldozer? Nothing wrong with that, but it's not a woman's job, and it just doesn't fit. When my wife worked on her job, there were jobs for porters to do, lifting, and when she did it for a certain period of time, she found that she had problem with her shoulders. So she got out of that. Stay in the women's role, what is more suitable for you. And let the men do what's suitable for them, because it didn't bother them, but why did it bother a woman? It tells you was in a role that you shouldn't be in. Yeah. And if people just look at their life and what's going around them, they will know automatically they're in the wrong field. And don't feel defensive about if a man can do it, I can do it. You can't do what a man do. You really can't. You don't have the same authority that a man would have. Women are saying, I can raise a man child just as well as my husband. In reality, you really can't. This is why possibly men's are trying to follow in the woman's footsteps, losing his masculinity, want to dress like a woman, want to look like a woman, because he's raised by one. The worst thing you could do with a boy child is cause him to lose his manhood trying to look like a woman, and because he was raised by you. Naturally, the natural instinct of a woman is to a girl, because she's supposed to be trained by a woman. They're going to fight against each other because the girl knows that without knowing it. That's a trainer. So is a man. A boy knew that the father, his trainer, if he fight against that, he's fighting against who he's supposed to be. And those things are important. keep everything in the right perspective, and things will work out.
One of the things that now I know that a lot of women got involved with, that men didn't get involved with, that you got involved with, which I thought was pretty commendable, was your involvement with the school district. So what my dad would do, he would get, and I'll have him explain that in a minute, but get involved with not only our education and K through 12 type, but really active from the perspective that teachers knew him and that kind of thing. We knew that the teachers remind you that they know our dad and that kind of thing. But I say that only because a lot of times you would hear about men weren't really that involved in that. And not to say they weren't, but just saying that that wasn't, you'd always hear about women being involved or mothers being involved and that kind of thing. But talk briefly about that and your involvement there.
Yes. I always wanted to be where my kids are. If they are in something, I should know about it. As a man, I did have 3 boys. So I got involved with PTA meetings. So I got to know all the teachers. They got to know me. I got to know everybody in the city school district, even to the Board of Education, even the president, everyone. I knew them and they know me.
Now, what involvement did you get into? You had a role, right?
Actually, I eventually become almost president of everything because I was like basically the only man was there. Now, so when they see a man in the meeting, the women automatically gravitate to me and said they will listen to him more than they listen to us. So you got to be our speaker. And so I would assume the role of vice president of their leader. And they gravitate to me because I did everything. With the city school district, in the city school district. Community school council chairperson, you had to vote for that position from the whole district, and I got that position.
You're still working at your job at Gleason, right?
Oh, I was still working 10, 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
And I was doing this. I was flipping back and forth from first shift to second shift. So when I was on day shift, I go to night meetings. When I was on night, I make day meetings. Yeah, so that didn't stop. I was out doing something almost 5 nights out of a week in the school district with my kids. So when I needed something, if I needed one of you guys to go to a special program, all I had to do had to show up, and you had it because I was there. I didn't wait for my wife to win and do it for me. I did it. It was my role as a husband, as a father, to take care of it. I knew what was going on. When they come in with the open court books in 81, I sit on that committee for 6 months and discuss every aspect of the open court reading material at the city school district.
Now, were there any other fathers there, or
from over the whole district? Yes, but as to the school I was in, primarily I was the only one. But
now, were they white or black?
Most of them were black.
Okay, well, because it was the city, right?
Yeah. Because the bigger percentage of the children at that time was majority was black, and so there were very few whites. There were a little more Hispanic.
The men or just kids?
The men,
okay,
and women. But as far as just knowing what's going on as a man, it made a difference to you guys and also to the people in the meeting because they know they had a man speaking for us. So it blessed me because I also had an opportunity to go from different cities to represent. I went to Philadelphia, New Jersey for the weekend to programs because my involvement, which my flight was paid, everything was paid for, a round trip, plus money was given in my pocket because of my involvement. So that it was very enlightening for me to be able to attend these meetings where people from the top brass in the city school district all over the state of New York, I'm sitting in meetings with these people and we're discussing programs. And so I was there. And when I come back, I had to made a report to the parents, teacher trainers, meeting to them. Because their director was also sitting in there, so I had to make it.
How would you advise people today, guys listening, to get involved from that perspective, or should they get involved?
They should. Number one, go to wherever your children are, you should be involved. They're always looking for, yes, they are, and they're not. You got to make yourself known, because some principals prefer not having parent too much involved. They just want to have the meeting and you don't do a whole lot, but you got to get involved because there are programs and things going on right now that you definitely want to be involved as a man when it comes to gender, race, and stuff like that, and what they're teaching.
Yeah.
They're teaching things in school. If you don't get involved, guys, you can't change it after it's been put into print. Get involved right now. Your presence is more important now than ever did. And for you to sit back on the side and watch your opportunity to go by, then when things come out that you don't like, then you really can't say anything. I always felt that wherever my children are, I should be. And who can protect them better than me? And that was my philosophy. So I followed them wherever they went.
One of the things I also want to just ask about, too, and then get a perspective of two things. One of the things we used to talk about as far as on some of our episodes and shows is how guys may interact with their kids, both younger and then older. And we joked about how women said that men need to be more gentle and all that kind of thing. You just talk just super quick on how guys handle kids differently than women.
A man child is a man child. He don't need to play with dolls. He don't need all this tender, cuddly, tender care. He need the roughness of a man. I wrestle with my kids. They wrestle with each other. You don't wrestle with a girl. This is expected. You don't want your children to come up too soft and just be a man. To be a boy. You don't want your boy to be too much girly, playing with dolls, that type of stuff. Just to be, if you want to be rough, but learn to be a boy. Learn to protect yourself without defending yourself. Because you don't have to protect yourself is just standing up for yourself without fighting. Most time people fight because they're afraid. Mm. So just be able to stand up as a boy or as a man and speak your mind. And so this is how the difference between one trained by a woman and trained by a male. Even my grandkids, I wrestle with them. I do it to you guys. I boxed you. Hit him in his chest a little bit. Doesn't hurt him. This is how men train another man to be tough, to be rough. He will be what he needs to be, but he need that type of interaction. You could teach him to cook, all of that is good, but first let him be a boy.
We can get ready to wrap up with that. I think that's like I said, guys, this is just a small piece. We didn't a whole lot more we could have went into, but obviously I just wanted to get just at least some meat on a lot of things we've already talked about in the past, but from a different perspective, especially coming from where, like we talked about in the 60s and the 70s and whatnot to today, where guys aren't involved with anything in some cases, or he wants to be, but women are trying to be men and boot them out and fighting them all the time and that kind of thing. And so it's all those things that we've talked about. And the times have changed and they seem to be getting worse and worse. But guys, I know there's a lot of good guys out there who want to do the right thing and they're fighting to be in their kids' lives and working hard and 2-3 times, whatever they got to do. I get that. So keep fighting the fight. But understand that this fight has been going on for a long time. Like you said, this has been going on from, he talked about in the 60s and 70s, probably been going on before that. But we also know in Scripture, it's been going on since Eve. When she ate the fruit, God said that your desire is going to be to your husband. In other words, you're going to challenge and fight for his position, and then he's got to make sure he maintains that. So this isn't something brand new. It seems to be getting worse because society is, of course, helping her with that and trying to diminish demand. But this fight's been out there for a long time. And then when you start talking man stuff, it sounds like, oh, you're being chauvinistic, but it's not. You have to do what's necessary to take care of the families, community, society, but at the same time, maintain masculinity that keeps everything in order. So I think this was good. We'll probably wind up doing the second one a little bit later on to go into maybe some other areas we didn't touch on today. But this was another great episode of Man to Man 360, and we sign out.
All right.
This episode of Man to Man 360 is a wrap. But you can check us out next week wherever you get your podcasts and listen on demand to earlier or exclusive content. Visit us at mantoman360.com. That's man, the number 2, man360.com. Then tune in live every Thursday at 8 p.m., Saturday 8 a.m., and Tuesday at noon at ourspirit.online.